Okay, folks, welcome to this month's Wings of Kentucky. This month, we're going to talk about a fun group, Kentucky's bark-clinging birds. Now, you may be wondering why I'm not just referring to the bark-clinging birds as woodpeckers. And in a sense, they are oftentimes pecking wood, but there's a little bit more to it than that, especially from a taxonomic perspective. So when I say bark clinging birds, I'm referring to any bird that spends much of its time clinging to the bark of a tree. So in Kentucky, that's going to be generally 2 avian orders and 4 avian families. So 2 avian orders are piciforms, which are the woodpeckers, such as this lovely pileated woodpecker here, and then the passeriforms, which are the perching birds or the songbirds. And within the passeriforms, sometimes called the passerines for short, we've got 3 families of bark-clinging birds. Sitidae, which are the nuthatches, we're going to see several members of this family. Perthidae, which are the creepers, of which North America has just 1 species, and it's fairly common in Kentucky, especially in the winter. And 1 member of Parulidae, which is this is a black and white warbler. It's the only sort of common bark-clinging wood warbler that we have here in Kentucky. Some others, like the black-throated blue warbler, will occasionally cling to bark, but none nearly as famously or as often as the black and white warbler, which will be the bird that we end today with. And let me actually unshare very briefly, make sure that I've shared my sound here, because there are a lot of sounds in today. So share again. Yes, share sound. Good. Glad I double checked on that. Okay, so let us return to this discussion. We're going to start with the piciforms, and we're going to work through all of Kentucky's common woodpeckers, how to sex them, for some of them, how to age them, how to identify them visually, and for most species, how to identify them with multiple different kinds of vocalization. Well, of course, we have to start with a favorite of mine, the downy woodpecker. It's really hard not to just love the downy woodpecker. It's our smallest woodpecker, a very small, cute little guy or gal, as the case may be. And the species is relatively straightforward to identify. Again, very small bird, generally black and white color scheme. The male, and I've got the males on the left for this entire thing today. The males have a little red spot on the nape. The female does not have a red spot on the nape. She's got a fully white back of the head there. Relatively complex pattern on the head. We've got a malar stripe. Again, aside from the red spot, the male and female are identical. A little malar stripe. We've got this dark auricular that kind of forms a band toward the back of the head, a dark crown, white supercilium, this sort of white boundary on the malar and auricular, and a white throat, white underparts. We've got a white bar along the mantle that kind of is very conspicuous in the back, and the wings are black and white spotted that in such a way that the spots almost form wing bars or banding on the wings. Now, take a look at the bill. Very small in the downy woodpecker. We've got these nasal feathers that in some individuals can cover up much of the bill barely protruding past. But either way, we see that the bill is quite petite in relation to the head, and that's going to be a very helpful characteristic for discerning from the hairy woodpecker. Vocally, not too bad. It is a descending whinny, and here's a spectrogram. We're going to see a bunch of these spectrograms today. Here is the frequency on our y-axis, and this is time. So you can see that this is a whinny or a trill, and you can see it descend. So let's listen to that song. I've got 2 examples here, and listen for that descent at the end. Here's a different individual, if I can get it. It also produces a single soft pick. And the drumming is a soft, rapid trill. Now, this fairly unremarkable drumming is something we're going to see in a bunch of the woodpeckers today. And I'm going to play you the drums of all the woodpeckers, but I won't start pointing out differences until we get to the small number of them that can be identified easily by their drums. Now, really experienced birders can tell some of these apart, but that's not me. So here's the drum of the downy woodpecker. So let's move along to the hairy woodpecker. Now you'll notice visually it is almost identical to the downy woodpecker. We've got the male on the left, again, red spot on the nape, female lacking that red spot. The big thing that we can use to discern these two woodpeckers from the downy woodpecker, well, there's a couple things. Size for one, but that's really difficult to depict with a photo. The really useful thing is the proportion of the bill. So look at the size of this bill. The bill itself is pretty much the same size as the skull, which is a very helpful trait. Look at this gigantic bill sticking out of that hairy woodpecker. Now, the song and call and drumming bear some resemblance to the downy woodpecker, but there's a key difference. Remember that whinny or that trill on the downy woodpecker descended at the end, or the downy woodpecker song goes down. The hairy woodpecker, which is much shriller, more of a dry, kind of angry sounding rattle, is basically a flat trill, does not descend at the end. So let's listen to that. Does not descend at the end. It also produces a pick call, but it sounds much harsher than the downy woodpecker. And it has a rapid drumming that does not have a really clear tempo that changes like the yellow-bellied sapsucker, doesn't trail off at the end like the pileated, just a standard kind of woodpecker drum. Now let's compare that downy woodpecker side by side. Again, that downy with that short little bill versus that hairy where the bill is essentially the same size as the skull. The downy song goes down at the end. Whereas the hairy woodpecker song does not go down at the end. Moving on, the red-bellied woodpecker. This is a lovely bird, arguably poorly named. You can sort of see in this image of the male where it gets the term red-bellied woodpecker. Across the Western Hemisphere, there are actually a lot of woodpeckers that have this sort of buffy underparts, black and white barred back, and some amount of red or orange on the head. So it's not totally absurd that it would be called the red-bellied woodpecker because many of them don't have a reddish hue to the belly, but it looked like this female here, no real apparent red at all. So it's a bird that gets complained about in terms of the name because really it should be called, at least in terms of our widespread North American woodpeckers, maybe like the red-naped woodpecker or red-capped woodpecker, I'm not sure. But the male shown on the left here basically has red from the base of his bill all the way up the head, down the nape, and even into the mantle a little bit. Where the female just has red on the back of her head, her crown and forecrown are basically either going to be gray or some buff color. But otherwise, fairly straightforward identification of the red-bellied woodpecker. Visually speaking. Now, vocally, not too bad either. The species produces a very rich whir song, which I'll play first. And the call is a series of either choke, 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 or cheek, cheek, cheek. And of course, the drumming. Next up, we have the red-headed woodpecker. Now, this one I would argue is well named. It's a fairly straightforward identification with a fully red head. The back and upper parts are basically completely black with the exception of the rump and the secondary flight feathers, and the underparts are like a nice clean white. Really straightforward identification. And it's important to note this color scheme we see here is present in both the male and the female. They're not easily discernible visually. But we often, especially later in the summer, we get these young juvenile birds that have either a brown head or some amount of red feathers mixed in. There's a red feather there, maybe one there. And there's dark tips on the secondary flight feathers. But again, we've got a dark back, We got white secondaries, and we've got a sort of a solid colored head and plain underparts. Relatively straightforward identification. And again, remember that bill size. This is more similar to what we saw with the hairy woodpecker and big long bill versus that short little bill in our downy woodpecker. So juvenile red-headed woodpecker, largely the same color scheme as the adult red-headed woodpecker minus the namesake red head. So let's take a listen to some vocalizations. I'm going to play you this rattle call first. They do this quite a lot. It's it's somewhat of a dry rattle. Whoa. I actually think, and I believe Dr. Price will have a herpetology either before or after this Wings of Kentucky. I think that this rattle call in many cases can sound like an eastern gray tree frog. It kind of reminds me of the call of a raccoon as well. Let's listen to that rattle call again. Now, the call that they're, I think, a bit better known for is this. I don't know if it's this song per se, but it is not very song-like. But if it's used as a song, they have a shrill, loud scream that they often do, which I will play for you now. And of course, the drumming. Next up, we have the yellow-bellied sapsucker. This is a fun bird, and it's called the yellow-bellied sapsucker, but they don't always have a yellow belly, and even if they have yellow underparts, it's pretty vague, and it's possible that they technically always have some amount of yellow. I'm not really sure, but I can tell you this, you're often not going to see much of a yellow belly. This here in the middle is a female. She's the yellowest of the three here. This male has a little hint of yellow, like under the black bib. This juvenile here, I mean, it has some hints of yellow, but it's pretty, I don't know, subtle. So we've got the male, the female, and the juvenile shown here. The male has a red forecrown and a red throat. The female has the red forecrown and a white throat, and the juvenile may or may not lack any amount of this red. But one thing that's really distinctive about the yellow-bellied sapsucker, in addition to being like a mottled, kind of dirty-looking woodpecker, there's one plumage characteristic that is always there for you with the sapsucker, no matter what. It never forsakes you. And that is this white patch on the shoulder here. That is always present. The yellow-bellied sapsucker never lacks that white shoulder, no matter which of these plumages you see, which is very convenient for identifying this surprisingly variable bird. Now, we mostly see our yellow-bellied sapsuckers here in Kentucky. In the wintertime, I take my ornithology class out to the Arboretum pretty regularly, and we see multiple yellow-bellied sapsuckers each time we visit the Arboretum for a class trip. Now, in addition to spotting these woodpeckers, which is not difficult to do because they're a decent-sized woodpecker, they have a variety of vocalizations that make them easy to identify. Now, in the breeding season, if you go up north, there's a lot of these birds, you can hear this screaming song. I believe it's primarily used as a song, a shrill, squeaky series of screams. But what we're going to hear in Kentucky most of the time is the mew call, and they produce it fairly often. It sounds like a cat meowing. It's a soft, nasally mew. Now, one thing that's cool about the yellow-bellied sapsucker is it's one of the species where the drumming is incredibly reliable for identification. So these other woodpeckers essentially produce a trill with their drumming, but the yellow-bellied sapsucker actually produces a erratic series of drums, basically striking the wood with their bill in a way that is, again, erratic and slowing down toward the end. So let's listen to that erratic and slowing drumming. Here's a slightly longer one. Moving on, the northern flicker. This is a fun woodpecker, and it was actually kind of difficult to find nice images of the bird clinging to wood. They are indeed woodpeckers, but they behave quite differently than a lot of woodpeckers do. For one, they, instead of clinging to the side of a tree like this individual is, they spend much of their time on lateral branches like a passerine, or even spending time on the ground. In fact, it gets its name because it sits on the ground oftentimes, flicking its tongue in and out of ant colonies and pulling out ants with its long, sticky tongue with a barbed tip. Very cool bird, visually unmistakable. We have the so-called yellow shafted subspecies here, where the shafts and undersides of the feathers are a yellowish color. Both the male here and the female here have this black bib, these very nice black spots on the breast and underparts, a basically brown and black barred back. And on both sexes, we have a face that's this like buffy salmon color with a gray nape and a little red nape spot present on both the male and the female. The main plumage difference between the male and the female is the male has a little black mustache and the female does not. Very beautiful woodpecker, unmistakable. Now, vocally, some find the northern flicker to be a little bit tricky. So we've got the drumming, which is certainly tricky. I would not personally use it to identify the species. Here's that drumming. The call, which in contrast to the drumming is very easy, is a skew or a clear. Now, it's the song that people trip up with. It is a long, drawn-out wick, 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 wick. Now, that's not too difficult on its own, but the next bird we're going to study, the pileated woodpecker, is also a long, drawn-out series of calls, and many find the two to be confusing. In fact, I spent time on the website Xenocanto, which is a citizen science platform for loading up bird vocalizations, and I spent a lot of time on there trying to find just the perfect calls to share with you all today. And a bunch of the northern flickers were misidentified as pileated woodpeckers and vice versa. So speaking of that pileated woodpecker, this is easily our most striking woodpecker. It's definitely our largest, the opposite of our downy woodpecker. These guys are just beastly. They're about the size of an American crow, really unmistakable, large, mostly black bird with white markings on the wings that are hard to see when the wings are folded, but big white patches on the wings when they're open. This striking black and white striped head, and of course the just absolutely classic large crest. The male's crest basically goes from the base of the bill all the way to the back, forms this nice mohawk. The female, she has a dark forecrown. Her sort of colored crest doesn't start till a little bit farther back on the head. And both sexes have a mustache, but the male has a red mustache and the female has a black mustache. Just an incredible bird. Now, vocally, I would say they present a challenge because that call is a series of kick, 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 kick calls that can resemble a flicker. We're going to listen to them side by side in a moment. It's usually shorter. I find it to be more powerful, and it kind of trails off at the end. The drumming is also fairly straightforward, and I think a species that can be identified readily from its drumming. It's because the drumming also trails off at the end and is very powerful sounding. Now let's compare the song of the flicker and the pileated woodpecker. So the flicker is that series of wick, 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 that sort of is weaker and higher pitched and longer. Now let's listen to that pileated woodpecker, which is shorter, lower pitched, and more powerful sounding. Okay, moving on. We're moving out of the piciforms and into the passeriforms, the passerines. And the first is the white-breasted nuthatch. Beautiful bird, this blue-gray back with this very intricately patterned secondaries and tertiary feathers. We've got this sort of dark wing bar here, again, right against this blue-gray back. White breast, white belly. If you see it in the right angle, we've got almost this chocolatey brown undertail coverts, a very plain white face, and then on the male, we have a black cap and a black nape, and on the female, we have a dark gray cap and nape. Now, woodpeckers often move on the side of a tree, right? But they can only really go up the tree, at least with any level of efficiency. Nuthatches can go up the tree just like a woodpecker, but they can also go down the tree, which is why you often see them clinging to the side of a tree with their head facing down, much like these two birds here. Now, vocally, pretty distinct. It has a song and a call. The song of the white-breasted nuthatch is a loose, nasally trill. Let's listen to that one more time here. Now that nasally quality is also present in the species song, or the call, which it produces often, which is a nasally eh, eh, eh. Okay, next up we have the red-breasted nuthatch. Now the red-breasted nuthatch is a species that we only see in Kentucky pretty much in the winter time. I often see them out at, of course, I'm here in Lexington, our Jacobson Park, where there's a stand of planted pines. And of course, as a northern bird, the red-breasted nuthatch is very commonly associated with conifer trees, especially pines and spruces. The male, which I have here on the left, much like the white-breasted nuthatch, is a species where we've got a brighter and more boldly colored male, where blacks are replaced with sort of dark grays in the female. Just like the white-breasted nuthatch, we've got a blue-gray back, but it's actually, in my opinion, bluer on the red-breasted nuthatch. We've got some amount of a reddish rufous underparts that may or may not bleed up into the throat. The male, again, being darker than the female. And the thing that never, ever forsakes you with this species is, again, you've got a dark cap and nape, just like on the white-breasted nuthatch, but we also have this dark eye line that is not present in the white-breasted nuthatch. So you just look for that white eye line, or this dark eye line with a white supercilium, instead of that plain face, gives it away as a red-breasted nuthatch every time. Now, the vocalizations, this is one of my favorite of the vocalizations we're going to cover today. It sounds like a teeny tiny little car honking its horn, going meep, meep, meep. Let's listen to that one more time. It's just so fun. And that's the red-breasted nuthatch. Moving on, and I believe this is the last member of Scidae we're going to cover today, is the brown-headed nuthatch. And as far as I know, the sexes are basically the same. Straightforward identification. Again, these nuthatches often have this blue-gray back, and the brown-headed is no exception. But of course, it's got a brown head, unlike the white-breasted nuthatch and red-breasted nuthatch. Still a very plain face. We don't have like a very obvious dark supercilium or eye line with a pale supercilium like we saw on the red-breasted. And again, very different from the white-breasted. One thing that's interesting about this species is in Kentucky, it's very limited in its distribution, mostly to southern Kentucky and almost exclusively to areas that have the southern pines, loblolly, longleaf, shortleaf, things like that. Pretty much the only place you can find the brown-headed nuthatch in Kentucky. Vocally, it's another fun one. Produces this sort of squeaky toy noise. Sounds like a dog playing with a squeaky toy. And the way that I remember the brown-headed nuthatch, and I don't often see people describing it this way, but it's helped me. It's like asking like kids, like, who wants cookies or who wants cake? And they say, we do, we do, we do. So listen for it saying we do, or something similar to that, with the quality of a dog squeaky toy. So here we go. And they produce these calls a lot. Basically, anytime they're getting excited in a family group, they're producing these squeaky toy calls. Okay, just two more species. Now we've got Kurthidae, the brown creeper. And again, with this species, as far as I know, the sexes are identical. There could be some sort of subtle trick that I've never learned, but I've never heard anyone describe a good way to sex the brown creeper. There are two different color morphs, but they're kind of hard to tell apart. There's a gray morph or a brown morph and a red morph. And pretty similar. What you need to know about this species is it's pale below, like some of the nuthatches, has a pale supercilium, but the back and the wings are this like intricately patterned and heavily mottled brown, buff, and tan plumage that allows the bird to blend right in with the trunk of a tree. When you see the bird from the side, we've also got this very long, very skinny, decurved bill. It is not a bird that's going to be doing a lot of pecking. It's not going to be prying bark off the tree. It is primarily going to use that delicate little bill to slide down into and between the bark on the tree and find small insects, spiders, things like that. Let's listen to the lovely song of the brown creeper, this high-pitched, thin little song. The mnemonic that I use is some variation on springtime is finally here. So it has this introductory note, which you see spring, and then this jumble, which for me, I do springtime is finally here. It's not a great mnemonic because I also use it and many others also use it for the Eastern meadowlark, but I don't think you're likely to confuse them. It's a very high-pitched song. It's a very feeble song. It's very weak, quiet, and very quiet little musical song. Very whistly. Okay, the last one we're going to cover here, Parulidae, is the black and white warbler. Now, unlike the brown creeper, which we see in the winter time quite a bit, we don't really see a lot of black and white warblers in the winter. Most of these guys head south. The species does winter throughout the southern United States, be it further south in Kentucky, but it's a more of a neotropical migrant. So a lot of these birds are down in Central America for the winter time. But when they're here in the breeding season, it's a cool bird. It's a wood warbler, and unlike most wood warblers, it loves to cling to the side of a tree. Just incredibly striking plumage, hard to mistake it for anything else. We've got the male here. We've got basically black wings. We've got a white stripe going down the tertials and into the secondaries, two white wing bars and black and white stripes on the mantle. On both sexes, we have some amount of streaking on the flanks and on the sides of the breast. And on the face, we've got a black and white crown, a black auricular mask, and a black throat on the male. The female essentially has all these same plumage characteristics, but her much less extensive markings on the auricular and a pale throat, and all of the other markings are just tending toward white. And even some females have a little bit of a brown or cinnamon in the flanks. Vocally, very straightforward. It is a repeated wheezy, 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 or a squeaky wheel going around and around. I think we're going to leave it at that for this Wings of Kentucky. Thanks for joining me to discuss some of Kentucky's bark-clinging birds. Get out there, go see if you can find some birds, maybe at your local park, local state forest, local wildlife management area, etc. And I'll be looking forward to the next Wings of Kentucky. In the meantime, stay warm and happy birding.